The scent of pine and cinnamon wrapped around me like a familiar embrace, a perfume I had spent all day curating. It was Christmas Eve, and our home was a portrait of perfect tranquility. The towering evergreen in the corner, draped in decades of collected ornaments, shimmered with soft, white lights that reflected in the polished hardwood floor. On the mantelpiece, stockings I had knitted for each member of the family hung with a hopeful plumpness. In the kitchen, the soulful hum of the season was a tangible thing. A rich, savory melody sung by the honey-glazed ham bubbling in its own juices, the sharp, sweet harmony of my sweet potato pie, and the steady, comforting bass note of collard greens simmering with smoked turkey. This was my symphony, my offering, the culmination of a lifetime of making a home. Robert, my husband of 35 years, was holding court in his wingback chair by the fireplace, a crystal tumbler of amber whiskey swirling in his hand. He was the proud patriarch surveying his kingdom, his deep laughter echoing through the rooms as he recounted, for what must have been the 100th time, the story of how he single-handedly closed the Henderson account. I watched him from the kitchen doorway, a dish towel in my hands, and I felt that familiar, complicated swell of affection. He was a man who occupied space, not just physically, but with the sheer force of his presence. His pride was not just in his accomplishments, but in this, the family he had built, the home I had made for him, or so I had always believed. The front door burst open, scattering snowflakes and laughter into the hall. Marcus, our son, filled the doorway, his arm wrapped around his wife, Keisha. My heart did its little leap, the way it always did when my children came home. They brought with them the cold night air and the vibrant energy of their youth. "Mom, it smells like heaven in here," Marcus said, enveloping me in a hug that still felt, wonderfully, like the hug of my little boy. "You have outdone yourself." "It is just dinner, Marcus," I said, but I could not suppress my smile. Keisha hugged me next, her cheek cool against mine. "Joyce, everything looks beautiful. You must have been working for days." "It is a labor of love," I murmured, meaning it. This was my stage, this warm, fragrant house, and my family was my audience. All I ever wanted was for them to feel cherished within these walls. Robert rose from his chair, his chest puffed out. "There is my boy, and the lovely Keisha. Come in, get warm, your mother has been fussing since sunrise." He said it with a chuckle, a benign dismissal of my efforts that I was long accustomed to. I simply wiped my hands on my apron and went to fetch the appetizers. The evening unfolded with its usual rhythm. We ate until we were pleasantly drowsy, the table groaning under the weight of the food. Laughter echoed, stories were traded, and for a few blissful hours, the world outside, with all its problems, ceased to exist. I moved around the table, refilling glasses, pressing second helpings on everyone, my happiness a warm, steady glow in my chest. This was the reward. This was everything. Finally, Robert pushed his chair back with a ceremonial scrape. "I believe it is time," he announced, his eyes twinkling. "Marcus, bring in the treasures." The gift exchange began, a ritual of brightly colored paper and exclamations of delight. I watched as my husband presented Marcus with a sleek new toolbox, the kind with every conceivable gadget. "For a man who is building his own empire," Robert said, clapping our son on the back. Marcus beamed, and I felt a surge of pride for them both. Then Robert turned to Keisha. He produced a small, velvet box from behind his back, a mischievous grin on his face. "For my daughter-in-law, who has brought so much light to this family," he said, his voice dripping with generosity. Keisha's eyes widened as she took the box. She clicked it open, and a collective gasp rippled through the room. Nestled inside was a diamond bracelet, an extravagant cascade of stones that caught the firelight and threw rainbows onto the ceiling. It was too much. It was the kind of gift for an anniversary, a milestone, not a casual Christmas Eve. "Robert, I do not know what to say," Keisha stammered, her cheeks flushing. She looked from the bracelet to Marcus, whose smile had become slightly fixed. "Nonsense," Robert boomed. "It is nothing less than you deserve. Put it on." An awkward silence descended, thick and heavy as winter wool. I kept my smile plastered on my face, my hands folded neatly in my lap. It is a generous gesture, I told myself. He is just being generous. But a cold, small knot began to tighten in my stomach. My eyes flicked to the single, small gift bag that remained by Robert's chair, the one with my name on it. After the fuss over the bracelet died down, Robert reached for it. He held the flimsy bag by its handles, seeming almost surprised to find it there. "And for my Joyce," he said, his tone shifting from ceremonial to casual. "The rock of this family." He handed it to me. The bag was light, too light. I reached inside and my fingers closed around a flat, plastic card. I pulled it out. It was a gift card to a department store, a generic, impersonal gift card. The amount, $50, was printed in bold, sterile numbers on the back. The room went utterly silent. I could feel the weight of my children's stares. Marcus looked down at his plate. Keisha nervously fingered her dazzling new bracelet as if it had suddenly burned her wrist. But it was Tisha, our daughter, who wore her anger like a banner. I could feel the heat of her glare from across the room. My own heart felt like it had been dipped in ice. A gift card. After 35 years of Christmases, of birthdays, of raising his children and keeping his home, of being the silent, steady engine of his life. A gift card that he must have picked up at the checkout line, an afterthought. The warmth of the evening drained from me, leaving a hollow, aching cold. The carefully constructed perfection of the night cracked, and through that crack seeped the truth of 1,000 minor slights, a lifetime of being taken for granted. I looked up at Robert, at his oblivious, satisfied face, and I summoned every ounce of strength I possessed. I arranged my features into a tight, gracious smile. My voice, when I found it, was a quiet, controlled thing. "Thank you, Robert. This is very thoughtful." It was a lie so transparent, so pathetic, that it hung in the air between us. Robert merely nodded, already turning to top up his drink. The matter settled. But the damage was done. The curtain had been pulled back. I saw the look that passed between Marcus and Keisha, a silent communication of shared discomfort. And I saw Tisha push her chair back from the table, her napkin crumpled in her fist, her eyes glittering with unshed tears of fury for me. She did not say a word, but the message was clear. She had seen it, too. The carefully masked hurt that I had carried for years was now visible, a stark, painful spectacle under the glittering Christmas lights. The storm that had been gathering for decades had finally broken, and I was left standing in the cold, empty ruin of the peace I had worked so hard to build. The silence in the house after the party was a physical presence, thick and heavy as the scent of stale champagne and wilting flowers. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, my silk dress whispering against my legs, a mocking sound in the overwhelming quiet. Each cork I picked up from the carpet, each smudged glass I carried to the dishwasher, felt like an act of violence against the perfect facade we had presented to the world just hours before. The memory of Keisha's laugh, bright and sharp, echoed in my mind, punctuated by the silent, gleaming accusation of the diamond bracelet on my wrist. It felt less like a gift and more like a shackle. Robert was already in his study, the door firmly shut. A sliver of light beneath it was the only sign of life. That closed door had become a familiar sight over the years, a boundary I had learned not to cross. But tonight was different. The seed of suspicion, planted by a look I could not quite interpret, had taken root and was now twisting its way through the bedrock of our 22-year marriage. I could not let it go. I would not. I stood before the door for a long moment, my hand hovering over the knob. I could hear the faint click of his keyboard, the occasional rustle of paper. Taking a deep breath that did nothing to steady the frantic rhythm of my heart, I turned the handle and stepped inside. The room was a sanctuary of mahogany and leather, smelling of old books and expensive whiskey. Robert sat behind his vast desk, his back to me, staring at his computer screen. He did not turn around. "We need to talk, Robert," I said, my voice unnaturally calm. He sighed, a weary, put-upon sound I had come to know well. "Joyce, it is late. I am tired. It has been a long day. Can this not wait until morning?" "No," I said, stepping further into the room. "It cannot wait. The bracelet, Robert." Now he turned, swiveling his leather chair to face me. His face was a mask of practiced patience, but I saw the flicker of annoyance in his eyes. "What about it? I thought you liked it. You seemed pleased enough when you opened it." "I was surprised," I said carefully. "It is so extravagant. I was just wondering why now, and why something so valuable." His jaw tightened. Can a man not buy his wife a beautiful gift for her birthday without being subjected to an inquisition? "I saw it, I thought of you, I bought it. It is that simple." But it was not simple. Nothing about his posture, about the defensive edge in his voice, was simple. "It is not that simple," I countered, my own voice gaining a hard edge. You have not bought me jewelry like this in years. You said yourself that the Henderson account was not finalized, that we needed to be careful with expenses. This bracelet, it must have cost a fortune. How can we afford it if things are so tight? He stood up abruptly, the chair rolling back and hitting the bookcase with a thud. There you go again, Joyce. Always the accountant. Always counting every penny, questioning every decision. I am the one who brings the money into this house. I think I know what we can and cannot afford. The words were like a slap. I question things because I have to, Robert. Because for the last decade, I have been the one balancing the checkbook, paying the bills, trying to make sense of where the money goes. And it does not always add up. There are withdrawals, large withdrawals, that you never explain. You call them business expenses, and then you get angry when I ask for receipts that never appear. The mask shattered. The carefully constructed veneer of the successful, benevolent husband fell away, revealing the man beneath, frustrated, condescending, and angry. That is because it is my business, he shouted, his face flushing a deep red. My company, my dealings. You have your little gallery, your little world of watercolors and pottery. You do not understand the pressures I am under, the things I have to do to maintain all of this. He gestured wildly around the room, at the house, at our life. My little world? The words came out as a choked whisper. Is that what you think of me, of what I have built? This little world has paid its own way for 5 years, Robert. It is not the money. It is the secrecy. It is the distance you have put between us. It is the way you look at me sometimes as if I am a stranger, as if I am a problem to be managed. We stood there, facing each other across the expanse of Persian rug, the air crackling with years of unspoken grievances. The quiet resentment I had carried for so long, the loneliness of a marriage that had become a business partnership, erupted out of me. I am your wife, or have you forgotten that? I feel like I live with a ghost, a man who comes and goes, whose life is a mystery to me. And this bracelet, it feels like a payoff, like you are trying to silence a nagging conscience. His laughter was short and bitter. You are being irrational, Joyce. You are inventing drama where there is none. I am tired of this. I am going to bed. We are done talking about this. He brushed past me, his shoulder knocking against mine, and left the room without a backward glance. The slam of the bedroom door upstairs was the final punctuation to our argument. He would sleep in the guest room tonight, as he had on so many other nights after a fight. But this was different. This was not just a fight. It was an earthquake, and the ground beneath my feet had split wide open. His dismissal, his accusation that I was irrational, solidified my resolve. I was not irrational. I was awake, and I was done being kept in the dark. I turned back to his desk. It was a fortress of his privacy, a place I rarely intruded upon. But the fortress had been breached by his own arrogance. He had left his laptop open. The screen had gone to sleep, but a single shake of the mouse brought it to life, revealing his private banking portal, already logged in. He had been so confident in his authority, so sure I would never dare to look. My hands trembled as I navigated to the statements. The numbers blurred before my eyes. I scrolled back months, then years, and there they were, the transactions I had questioned, not business expenses, large, regular cash withdrawals, transfers to an account I did not recognize, thousands of dollars siphoned away from our joint life. A cold dread settled in my stomach, colder than any ice. This was not about business. This was a secret life. I began opening drawers, my movements frantic now, pens, paper clips, corporate memos. Then, in the bottom drawer, tucked beneath a stack of old financial reports, I found a simple manila folder. It was not labeled. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it. The first thing I saw was a receipt from a jeweler I knew well, an exclusive boutique in the city. The date was from 2 weeks ago. The item description, 1 diamond tennis bracelet, platinum setting. The price made me gasp, but my eyes dropped to the line below. There was another item purchased on the same transaction, a matching diamond necklace. The price was even higher. I stared at the receipt, my mind reeling. A matching necklace. I had received only the bracelet. My fingers, numb and clumsy, shuffled through the other papers in the folder. There was a receipt for a hotel, the Alexander, for a weekend last month. A weekend Robert had claimed he was at a tech conference in another state. A receipt for dinner for 2 at a notoriously romantic restaurant. And then, my fingers brushed against a small, thick piece of paper. I pulled it out. It was a photograph. The world stopped. It was a candid shot, taken outdoors, perhaps in a park. The sun was shining. Robert was smiling, a genuine, easy smile I had not seen directed at me in a decade. His arm was wrapped around Keisha, not a polite, friendly gesture. It was an intimate, possessive embrace, his hand resting on her waist, pulling her close. She was leaning into him, her head tilted back, laughing, her face radiant. They looked happy. They looked like a couple. They looked like we used to look. The air left my lungs in a rush. The room tilted. I stumbled back, collapsing into his leather chair, the photograph clutched in my shaking hand. The pieces of the puzzle, the mysterious withdrawals, the extravagant but solitary bracelet, the distance, the arguments, the late nights, they all clicked into a devastating, horrifying picture. The affair had not been a recent flirtation. The ease, the familiarity in that photograph spoke of years. A sob tore from my throat, raw and painful. I was suddenly aware of the profound silence of the house, a silence that was no longer just heavy but suffocating. I was alone. I had been alone for a very long time, and I had not even known it. The diamond bracelet on my wrist felt grotesque now, a cruel joke, a token bought to placate the wife, while the real gift, the matching necklace, was given to the woman he truly loved. I heard a floorboard creak upstairs, the sound of the guest room door opening, his footsteps on the landing. He was coming back down. I dropped the photograph as if it had burned me, my entire body trembling with a fresh, primal fear. He could not find me here. He could not know what I knew. The evidence of his betrayal was spread out before me on the desk, an indictment of our entire life together. I had to get out. I had to hide what I had found, but my limbs would not obey. I was frozen, trapped in his chair, listening to the slow, deliberate sound of his descent, each step bringing him closer to the truth I now held, a truth that would shatter everything. The sharp, clean scent of pine from the Christmas tree did nothing to cut through the thick haze of sleep that clung to the room. Sunlight, weak and pale as bone china, streamed through the bay window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the silent air. I had not slept. The night had been a long, cold vigil, a silent preparation for the earthquake I was about to unleash. My hands, folded in my lap, were steady. The storm inside me had passed, leaving behind a landscape of crystalline calm, frozen solid with resolve. I had waited until the children were all under one roof. Marcus, my sweet, bewildered Marcus, had arrived late on Christmas Eve, his laughter a foreign sound in a house that had already become a museum of our former life. He was here now, slumped on the sofa next to Tisha, who sat with a ramrod straightness that mirrored my own. Robert was in his usual armchair, pretending to read the paper, but I could see the tension in his jaw. He knew something was wrong. He had felt the ice in my silence for weeks, but he had mistaken it for a thaw, for forgiveness that would never come. "I would like everyone to listen," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet morning. It did not sound like my voice. It was too even, too devoid of the warmth that usually lived there. Marcus looked up from his phone, a faint smile on his face. "What is it, Mom? Are we opening presents early?" "No," I said, and the single word extinguished his smile. "There will be no presents this morning. There is something else I need to give you all." Robert lowered his newspaper slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Joyce, what is this about? It is Christmas." "I know what day it is, Robert." I reached for the manila envelope on the coffee table. It felt heavy, not with paper, but with the weight of a shattered universe. "It is about truth, and I think Christmas is as good a day as any for the truth. Do you not agree?" Tisha's hand found mine and squeezed. Her support was a solid rock in the swirling chaos I was about to unleash. I pulled out the first photograph and placed it squarely in the center of the table. It was the one from the hotel, Robert and Sarah laughing, his hand a possessive curve on her lower back. The room went utterly still. Robert's face drained of all color. "Where did you get that?" he whispered, the words a dry rustle. "That is not important," I said, my gaze fixed on Marcus, whose face was a canvas of dawning, horrified confusion. "What is important is what it is, and who it is." I laid down another photo and another. Each one was a fresh bullet, hitting its mark with silent, devastating force. The restaurant, the car, the apartment building. With each image, Marcus flinched as if struck. His eyes, so like his father's, darted from the pictures to Robert's ashen face, then to me, pleading for an explanation that would make it all a terrible mistake. "Mom," he choked out, what is this?" "It is your father," I said, the words clean and sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. "And it is Sarah. It has been going on for quite some time. The silence that followed was a physical thing, a suffocating blanket. Then it shattered. You followed me, Robert roared, surging to his feet. His anger was a pathetic, flailing thing. You had me followed, you invaded my privacy. I did not even look at him. My eyes remained on my son. I did what I had to do to confirm what my heart already knew. I needed evidence, Robert. You are a master of lies. I needed something solid, something you could not talk your way out of. Marcus was shaking his head, a slow, disbelieving motion. Sarah, Dad with Sarah, your assistant, how could you? His voice cracked, breaking into 1,000 pieces. The betrayal was not just his father's, it was mine, for being the one to show him this ugly truth. How long? Robert sank back into his chair, deflated. He would not meet his son's eyes. Marcus, it is complicated. Complicated? Marcus laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You are sleeping with a woman who is younger than I am. What is complicated about that? You have been lying to us, to Mom. He stood up, his tall frame trembling with a rage I had never seen in him. You have been lying to everyone. You are a fraud. The confrontation I had dreaded and anticipated unfolded like a terrible play. Marcus turned on me, his pain twisting into accusation. And you knew, for how long? You let me sit here on Christmas morning and ambush me with this. I needed you to see, I said, my own composure fracturing for the first time. A single tear escaped, tracing a cold path down my cheek. I needed you to see that I am not crazy, I am not a suspicious wife. I am a woman who has been betrayed by her husband and her friend. I could not have you doubt me. I could not face that, too. Tisha stood then, placing herself between Marcus and me. Do not you dare blame her, she hissed at her brother. She is the victim here. He did this. She pointed a trembling finger at Robert. He did all of this. He broke this family, not her. The room erupted into a cacophony of shouted accusations, choked sobs, and the terrible, guttural sound of a family tearing itself apart at the seams. I watched it all from a strange distance, the calm returning. I had carried this secret for so long, and now the weight was distributed. It was a heavier burden for them, but it was no longer mine alone to bear. When the storm of initial fury subsided, leaving behind a wreckage of tears and exhausted silence, I spoke again. It is over, Robert, I said. The words were final, absolute. I want you to leave. He looked at me, truly looked at me, and for the first time I think he saw the woman I had become in the crucible of his betrayal. The woman who would not break. There was no fight left in him. He just nodded, a slow, defeated gesture, and walked out of the room. The sound of the front door closing was the quietest, most profound sound I had ever heard. The weeks that followed were a long, gray stretch of grief. The house felt cavernous and empty, even with Tisha staying with me, her presence a quiet anchor. Marcus retreated, his worldview shattered. We spoke in short, careful sentences, the wound between us still too fresh. I allowed myself to feel it all, the profound loss, the humiliation, the anger. I did not fight the tears when they came, but I did not let them drown me. One afternoon, as the first hints of spring began to threaten the frost on the window panes, I was sitting at the kitchen table with Tisha. We were not talking about the divorce papers, which my lawyer had delivered that morning. We were talking about nothing important, and everything was important because it was a conversation about our future, a future that was ours to design. I have been thinking, I said, tracing the grain of the wood with my finger. I would like to paint the living room, a lighter color, something that lets the sun in. Tisha smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. I think that is a wonderful idea, Mom. It was a small decision, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But it was my decision. It was not for a husband or for a family that used to be, it was for me. The divorce was the legal end, the official severance. But this choice of a paint color was the true beginning. It was the first brick in the foundation of a new life, a life I would build on my own terms, centered on my own strength and peace. The closure I sought was not in Robert's punishment, but in the reclamation of my own worth. I looked at my daughter, at the fierce love in her eyes, and I felt a fragile sense of hope. But as I glanced out the window, at the empty driveway where Robert's car would never be again, a cold thought whispered at the edge of my newfound peace. The legal battle was just beginning, and Robert was not a man who surrendered his possessions easily. He had lost his family, but he would fight to keep his image, his money, his control. The war for my future, I knew, was far from over.